Bienvenue. Les aventures de Frank et Ben. 5e série. Frank and Ben go to Lac de Plaisir with Geneviève and Menot. Première histoire. Frank and Ben go to Lac de Plaisir, Part 1. Exultantly, Frank reads the email on his computer. Finally, he says to himself as he jumps up and moves wildly about his bedroom. Finally, he has just received word from Geneviève that she and Menot are able to take some time off from their busy schedules to come out to Perkins and spend a day with him and Ben. After reading the brief email over at least 4 or 5 times and leaving his bedroom, which is in the finished basement of the family home, and walking around the adjoining rec room at least 5 or 6 times, Frank returns to his room, stretches out on his bed, and begins to think how wonderful it will be to spend a day out at Lac de Plaisir with Geneviève and Menot. Oh, it's great they can come out so early in the morning, he says to himself. Now we'll be able to get in a full day of water skiing, canoeing, ATVing, fishing, swimming, and sea-doing. Of course, I still have to keep my fingers crossed about Uncle Emile. He's going to let me know as soon as possible when he'll get back from Labrador. Oh, I hope he can wrap his work up there in the next couple of days. Then we'll be able to go up in his hydroplane and see the lake from an altitude of 2,000 or 3,000 feet. I can't think of anything in the whole world that would be a better way to start off the day. I know that Geneviève and Menot are going to have the time of their lives on Saturday. After he has calmed down a bit, he starts to think about how he'll also have the opportunity to talk to Geneviève about his plans for the future. Boy, when she finds out I've definitely made up my mind to go to university, she'll probably say, "You've certainly changed since I first met you." Yeah, to think of it. When Ben and I first got to know her and Menot on the bus, all I could do was talk about myself as a construction worker and heavy equipment operator. She seemed interested enough, but of course all that was a far cry from what she does in life. And then to top it off, she saw me reading nothing but hunting and fishing magazines on the bus. Boy, won't she get a surprise when she finds out not only have I got it definitely in my sights to go to university in a year, but that I'm also reading the very same novel she was reading on the bus. That reminds me, I should take it along in the boat, and when we're out in the middle of the lake, casually pull it out and read a page or two. When she sees it's Dostoevsky or Dostoevsky or whatever his name is, she'll say, "Frank, are you serious?" Then I'll make some comments to show her I know exactly what's going on in the book and even remember what she had to say about it on the bus. That reminds me, I'll make sure Ben doesn't spoil things by coming out with some stupid remark. Yes, there can be no doubt that over the past 3 weeks, Frank's thinking has changed a great deal. His outlook on what he should be doing in life is at present a far cry from what it was only a short time ago. before he met Genevieve and Minot on the bus going from Winnipeg to Ottawa. His biggest dream was someday becoming a part owner of the family business. And his most immediate plans were focused on the end of summer, when instead of continuing on in high school, he was to work full-time at J.R. Provost and Sons. Going to university then was as far from his mind as learning how to speak any other language but English. On this note, it should be mentioned that both Frank and Ben improved their English rather surprisingly while being out west. First, they worked on a ranch owned by Ben's uncle, and then they stayed briefly with Ben's aunt in the city. Both Uncle Bob and Aunt Petunia are unilingual English, and so Frank and Ben had no choice but to speak English with them. As well, the boys got the clever idea of making a contest out of speaking only English to each other. It was while putting in fence posts one morning on Uncle Bob's ranch that Frank wanted to prove to Ben how strong a will he had and how much he could control himself. Almost impulsively, he said to his friend, "All right, Mr. Know-it-all, you think my excessive talking in the classroom is a sign of lack of self-control? Well, let's just see who has self-control and who doesn't. Only a minute ago you told me that your great-uncle in Montreal said that only once in his entire career as a French teacher did he meet two people learning French who actually practiced it outside the classroom. Well, here's where I show you what kind of stuff I'm made of. Let's start speaking only English to ourselves and do this right until we get back to Quebec. And if one or the others of us starts speaking French and can't get back to speaking English right away, then he has to pay the other guy $20. Let us say here and now that both Frank and Ben did a remarkable job and spoke only English to each other except for a few minor slip-ups until they got on the Greyhound bus heading for Ottawa. There they met two young Francophone women called Genevieve and Minot. Shortly after two troublesome incidents on the bus that involved another young woman called Carlotta Hardbottom, the four of them, Genevieve, Minot, Ben, and Frank, got off together at a bus stop in a little town called Blood River. In Blood River's one and only restaurant, they sat around a table and excitedly discussed what had just taken place on the bus. Of course, they spoke French, and so it was that after this conversation, during which the young women, both second-year students at the University of Ottawa, impressed them greatly, and indeed, after so much else that had happened and got them worked up, Frank and Ben, naturally enough, completely forgot about their agreement not to speak French to each other while on the road.